Hello, this is David Lee. Welcome to this monthly training. This is the monthly conference call that I do for the We Buy Houses Learning School. And this month I thought I'd give a bit of an insight to you about my background and my colleague Rick Otten, his background, that when we joined together in the early 2000s and started developing the cash flow systems without bank finance for the United Kingdom, just to give you an understanding of how this came about and where we are today and how it makes sense to me, but how I have noticed in recent times how many of these strategies, this way of doing business, it seems to be lost over the last few years as people have defaulted back to traditional banking finance that you cannot rely on forever in the future. The market goes up, the market goes down, and what I explain to you is when the banking system has problems, they're not always available for finance, ready-made finance, and you've got to find other ways. So let's get started. Here I am 20 years ago with my wife, Rick and his wife, and Peter Pascalis, who worked for Howard Kennedy in central London, and I was working on instalment contracts that I developed with Peter, had legal opinion done, and was working out in Kent, buying with a mortgage, because mortgages were easy in those days, but I was selling my first few properties on instalment contracts between me, the seller, and a buyer who moved into the property when we exchanged contracts. So I never mentioned the word tenant, landlord. I mentioned the word seller, me, buyer, and there was no tenancy agreement. I know that causes a lot of people problems to understand, but I knew nothing else. Understand that my background was a business systems analyst. I'd worked in a telephone company in Australia. I'd worked for a gas company. I'd worked in the United Kingdom in insurance, banking, recruitment, railways. And so I was just transferring what I'd always done, working from one industry to another. This industry just happened to be the property industry in the United Kingdom. But for me, it was the same thing. It was what I was always doing. I was investigating, analyzing, working out solutions on how to come up with whatever the company wanted, or in this case, what we were trying to do, that we were replicating in Australia, but using a different means, different mechanics to apply the same strategy and get the same result. So there were differences. So that's what we were doing. And that's before I even started doing lease option. Oh yeah, you know that word, lease option. Well, nobody knew it back then, and I didn't even know it when you see me there. I only knew installment contracts. And so between 2002 and 2008, there's examples of some of the properties that I was working on as I was documenting, as I was going through trial and error, step by step, refining what I was doing. There's the very first house I did on the top left. Next, you see an installment contract. You see for sale by, not the landlord, by owner, that was me, no mortgage needed. That was an installment contract. Next to that, you see, can you read it? Rent now, buy later. That must be a lease option. Yes, that's different. So I was doing a combination of both. What you see here, I'll just move this down. I had to have proof for everything. There's Vladislav and Isabella, who are now getting their mortgage with the mortgage broker 2 years to arrive at completion. So these people mostly bought the properties, or sometimes they would, after living in them for a while, they would sell them on the open market. So that's what I was doing. So next, what I had to do, other people wanted to know. Remember I said I was documenting. We created manuals, we created audio series for training. You see me on stage there, top left, with my Indian buyers. They bought 2 houses off me. You won't be able to see it. There's a couple of Polish people that I was selling in the Polish community. And all these people you see in front of you at the boot camp events, guess what? They needed support, and who was going to support them? Who had the local experience on the ins and outs of what to do, what not to do? I knew the details because I'd been doing it for many, many years. Rick was there to give them the concepts, the strategies, how they applied. But if you've ever noticed in the training, Rick is mixing up between Australia terminology, the language used there, and the language used in the United Kingdom. For example, in Australia, they actually create a loan agreement. So it is a loan, it's credit, it's finance. So we can use all those words, vendor finance. But in the United Kingdom, I realized we wouldn't be able to do it that way. So we conceived the documentation where we built in a payment system. So when he says remortgage, refinance, anything like that, having a loan, transferring from one loan to another. No, we're not. We're applying for a mortgage the first time because we have created a payment system from the purchaser or tenant buyer, depending whether it's an installment contract or a lease option. We are embedding the payment system in one direction to the other party, the seller or the landlord seller. On the other side, so it's money going in one direction. We don't chase anybody if they run away because all we've done is received money. There's no loan outstanding. We either put it back on the market and resell it this way, or what I've told to our buyers, if they want to, as I've explained, they can resell on the open market and make a profit. So that's what I got involved with after that. Now, let's advance through to 2024. And it reminds me in many ways, just like 2007, just before the global financial crisis, where everybody back then was doing the same thing. They were doing buy-to-let, refinancing after a period of time and going back, building up their credit. And guess what happened with the global financial crisis? Many people came undone because they were 100% bank dependent. And what goes up? Well, back then, must go up even more. But what we know with hindsight, people look at me and laugh. What goes up must come down. And it's no different today. So don't think that just because there's new faces out there, people act in the same way. So if somebody goes to one of these meetings and you get 20 seconds to say what you do, this is what you're going to hear. I'll just move myself down to the middle. There we go. I look like Santa Claus there. Getting colder these days. So I'll put a new head on my body. There we go. So the two that are in green, people say I'm a deal sourcer. You don't need bank finance for that. Rent to rent, no bank finance needed. But all the other strategies that I'm hearing, now I thought they were cold. Brrr. No, it's buy, refurbish, rent, and refinance. I got that right. I hadn't heard that before. We didn't call that that in the old days. HMOs, lots of rules and regulations, bank finance needed, the typical buy-to-let, bank finance needed. And what I noticed with lease options, people are using it before they go into bank finance. They may, I don't know why they say lease options, purchase lease option. From what I know, a purchase option is good enough. You want to get some renovations done to the property, you need a purchase option. You may be making payments on the option agreement for while you're holding the property, and then you quite typically, I'm hearing them saying, then we get it valued, then we get bank credit, and we put that on. So they're using it as an interim strategy for what they're doing. And lastly, new that I'm hearing quite often is commercial to residential. And that can be to residential to rent afterwards, but some people that are training at the moment are typically just on selling afterwards, so they've got no tenant hassles to worry about. So that is another strategy. So I can guarantee 95 to 99% of people that explain what they do are doing one of these strategies. So I get up there and I will say something that's different. I get their attention because they've never heard of this. That's something that's surprising. After what all the people that we trained in the 2000s, 2010 onward. I think with the banking system having come back a while, people by default will go back to the banking system. And if that banking system starts playing up, like I'll explain shortly, they will not be equipped to know what to do. So I'm standing back. I'm the business systems analyst, and I'm just observing. I'm not saying it's good or bad what you're doing. I'm just, when I hear people talk, and they could be beginners, I'm just evaluating the degree of difficulty for what they're about to embark on. I give them positive replies. I'll say, that's great. People are doing that. I know that system works. Of course it works. It's just, how quickly do you want to get up and run, making cash flow like in Cash Flow 101 to get started? Because as we know, many people try to get started, but it doesn't work out. And as I've seen at all these events that people turn up to, the large majority have spent a lot of money, didn't get anywhere, and then they have to go back to what they were doing in their real day-to-day work. So let's I'll move myself back up the top. Okay. So, as I explained a couple of months ago, we can't be insular in our thinking about the UK being impermeable to the outside world. I evaluate what's going on. I'm taking mental notes of what's happening and how will it impact me. And I told you, I think and feel that we are looking and feeling like 2007 all over again, but this time it's on a bigger scale. Now, you are aware of all these things happening in the outside world. The massive inflation that we're going through, mass migration. Did you know there's been bank failures going on in recent 18 months? There's more on the way. We are having conflicts that are potential nuclear threats between Europe, United States, and Russia. What impact would that have on your property investing career? Well, overnight it would come to a close, and all that financial debt, just like the pandemic. See what happened overnight. We are in a highly volatile world at this very moment, and I just suggest to people who say to me, David, what do you think? The UK property market is solid and strong. Oh, that sounds familiar. I heard that before. There's a shortage of land and there's always demand for it. Yeah, that sounds good. What do you think? Well, I'd say, have you heard about all this that's going on in the world? Mention a few of these things. Do you think it could have an impact on us if any of these come to pass? Look at the food crisis, the pandemics, national debts everywhere, the BRICS nations. Do you think that could have an impact on the value of the dollar, the pound, if a majority of the countries are starting to trade using the BRICS system instead of the SWIFT system of the West? So there's all this happening at the same time. And I just convey, this is like having an insurance policy where you're not 100% bank dependent, and you can apply some of these strategies and integrate them to what you're already doing. But I know and understand you cannot get people to change their ways very easily. And I'm sorry to say, this is the analogy. People behave and act in herds. They feel comfortable looking over their shoulder and everybody's doing the same. Okay, for me, it's just my background. I feel uncomfortable when I'm in this environment. I know if I'm doing like everybody else, sooner or later something goes wrong and I'm ill-equipped, ill-prepared, and I don't have the knowledge or the skill set to get out of that situation. I can quote Robert Kiyosaki. You've read the books. You've heard him speak. What does he say? The mind of the entrepreneur. You're looking over your shoulder. You're looking over the horizon. What can come next? Do you really feel comfortable getting up on stage, for example, and just looking and sounding like everybody else? At the moment, I'm building up the system again. I don't want to be training people out in the world running around the country. I've done all that. So, and I'm more interested, and I got more time on my hands. I can just implement the steps close to where I live, and I know I can't chase the market. So I've stopped chasing the market. When the market's ready, the market will come to you. So I'm just putting in the steps in place. I advise people in the system how to get yourself set up so the market will come to you. I've taken the best of the best from the last 20 years. I've layered it in step by step, so you can follow. Now, I know I was speaking to somebody just recently. She wanted to know how quickly she could be making money. And I said to myself, how quickly do you want to get a degree at the university? Are you going to be able to do everything? You just need time to understand, because I know, as I said to her, I can unload what I know in 5 minutes, and you will be absolutely overwhelmed with what I tell you. But if I layer it out step by step and you can understand each step along the way, it will make sense. So as I said to her, she wanted to know, where can I learn this? Well, I said you can go and learn and get trained, but when people are training these days with little or no experience, they're spending $10,000 on average. I've just looked around and kept my ears open for a 12-month mentoring program. Sometimes less, sometimes more, but around $10,000 is what you're going to spend just to get started as you go along. And I've told you, many people get started. 80% do nothing, and they've spent that amount of money. I think, oh my God, you don't want to be in the 80% or even the next 10%, which I tried to do something and then stopped. So they really did nothing else. Next 5%, they do something and get a result but stop. It's only the last 5% that do something. And so if only 5% are doing something and getting repeat results, do you want to be 95%er, or do you want to be a 5%er? Because that's what it's going to cost in many instances to discover you're a 95%er. I thought, that's not really good. I don't want to go out training or anything like that. I'll put the best of the best online so people can get it and it's affordable. So what I've done and decided under my own initiative, I've taken the best of the best, how to control a house for a $1 deposit with no mortgage needed. That's free, because I wanted you to understand, so that if I meet you in person, I can't explode your brain in the 5 minutes, which would happen. I could give you I'll give you what we do, the strategies that we do, so they make sense. Explain it to you, so now you understand the concepts. If you want to join us, are you going to be paying $10,000 on average per year? No. You're not going to do anything like that. You're going to see examples here where Rick is explaining details. He's on stage. I'm explaining from my perspective of building a business, building a system, which is different to the communications, to the strategies. You're getting the information from two different perspectives, and so you can integrate them. So there, are you an entrepreneur? Because remember, I showed you the sheep, and everybody sees what's happening today, doing like everybody else and feeling comfortable in the group. Or are you like Robert Kiyosaki, myself, Rick Otten, what we see, and which is the second bounce of the ball? Because as I've explained already in this video, looking at what's over the horizon will determine what you should feel comfortable with today. So if people are taking on, once again, lots and lots of bank debt, that would make me feel uncomfortable. With my hindsight, with my knowledge of seeing the world differently, not judging, but just being the analyst, looking at where we're at in this current moment in time and what I'm doing and how it affects me. Before I go, I keep adding more and more material, more courses, and I recently just created this one quick question course. I think there's 25 videos in this series where I'm answering all the questions. It's like the glue where we teach you how to use installment contracts, how to use lease options, how to apply the different strategies, how to talk to people. But I know there's the glue where people come undone, stuck, when somebody, the other party, asks one of these questions. So I went and assembled all these answers to have you prepared for that one quick question, because just like when I used to go in between the breaks at my training, somebody would lean over and say, David, one quick question. And as I told you, it's not one quick answer. So I've just added that, and I'm adding more and more content. I think there's over 60 hours of audio, video content, plus many manuals for each of the strategies involved. So that's my reasoning for what I'm doing, how it fits in with you, how I'm trying to help you in your property journey. And I also, if you've got transactions on the table, I will help you with those on a 30-minute call once a month if you've got a transaction. Not if you've got one quick question. There's your one quick question answered. So if you want to get started for free, learn about what we do rather than how we do it, so that you understand and feel comfortable. And as I wrote below, protect your future. Act now before another crisis hits, because a crisis is going to hit. What goes up must come down. If you believe otherwise, you're crazy. Okay, this is David Lee. Thank you for joining me for this month, and hope to catch you again in the next presentation next month.